part of a good ghost story is you never really know the specifics. It keeps people guessing, and it also keeps people interested. Still to this day, there's folks trying to figure out who Mary might have been. The story of Resurrection Mary just follows a pretty simple premise. An unknowing driver driving down Archer Avenue near Justice, Illinois, usually in the hours of the night, 11 p.m. till 3, 4 in the morning, will encounter a beautiful blonde woman in an all-white dress, either on the side of the road or crossing the street. They'll stop, ask if she's lost or if she needs anything, and depending on who's telling the story, she might disappear before she finishes crossing the road by the time you stop, or she might get in the back of your car and ask for a ride to where she lives, and she directs the driver to Resurrection Cemetery, and once she asks the driver to stop, a look in the back seat, and it was as if she was never there. The significance of Resurrection Cemetery in the story, I think it's twofold. The common held belief is that she is probably buried there, or it might be because of the cemetery's close proximity to what was the O. Henry Ballroom, which is where she, again, has been reportedly seen. On the topic of the cemetery itself, there was a really interesting thing that occurred in 1976. It was an August night. A driver called the local PD to report that he had seen what appeared to be a young woman in a white dress behind the gates of the cemetery, and this was well after the visiting hours had passed, and so the cemetery was closed, and he was concerned that she might be stuck in there or something might have happened. Within a few minutes, police were dispatched, but no young woman could be found. However, upon closer investigation, the local police officer did discover 2 of the cemetery's wrought iron bars that sort of mark the perimeter of the cemetery were bent at a really strange angle, and so much so that some folks said that you could see handprints on there, and this sort of like started this frenzy of it was the ghost of Resurrection Mary trying to get out of the graveyard. And it got so bad because people sort of came in droves to either get a glimpse of Mary or see the wrought iron bars that the cemetery officials actually had them removed in 1977, sent to be repaired, and then reinstalled in 1980. So you can't see them anymore, but for that brief year-long period, it was sort of like a pilgrimage site for folks really interested in local hauntings. There are 2 figures in history that people have most closely associated with Mary. The first one was a young woman by the name of Mary Bregovy, who died in 1934 in the Loop after a pretty terrible car accident. And the reason people have linked Mary with the ghost story is because she was seen dancing at the O. Henry Ballroom, which is the typical haunt where most of the sightings have been for Mary. The crash happened downtown because after the O. Henry Ballroom closed, her entourage wanted to keep the party going, so they ventured into the city to find another place to hang out, but she met an unfortunate end. The second person that people have linked Mary to is Anna Dorcas, who people called Mary, who also died in nearby Summit, Illinois in a car accident. And she would have been about 12 or 13 at the time she died, but was also known for enjoying dancing and being a very lively person. We can't say for certain that either one of those is Mary, but those are the 2 historical figures most closely associated with the ghost that we know today. Sometimes we'll go years without anyone sharing anything, and all it takes is for one person to say that they've seen something. I think still in this day and age, it's a bit taboo to talk about having those types of experiences for one reason or another. I think the peak of the sightings were from the 1930s till about the 1980s was when she was most heavily reported. Here at the Chicago History Museum, we're tasked with sort of like remembering and interpreting the city's history, but so much of it was never written down, or so much of it was lost to time because no one thought to save these things. And often what remains is these sort of like oral accounts or these stories shared from the past. Both of the young women who are sort of most closely associated with the story, they were both Polish American women, and to this day that area of Justice Summit is still has a very heavy Polish American population. It's another tool for us to track sort of the movement of people, how ideas are spreading, and also just cultural beliefs that people might have brought from their homeland in their immigration story here in the US. Even though we might never get to the bottom of it, historically speaking, they still offer a lot of value as a way into other larger topics in the collective history of the city. I think that Mary's story resonates with Chicagoans because, one, it has all the makings of a good ghost story. Again, it has sort of like that murky history. It's very local. It's also relatable, going out for night dancing. It does two things really well. One, it sort of serves as this keepsake of what things were like, you know, in the 1930s, the heyday of ballroom dancing in America. Very few remnants remain of that era in Chicago, so that story keeps that alive. And also in the 1930s, you know, the culture was completely different, and picking up a hitchhiker probably wasn't as crazy as it might be today. And then the second reason I think that Mary's story really has endured is it's a cautionary tale. You know, it's warning folks who are out there in the late hours of the night. You don't know what's lurking, especially, again, in places where vice might be readily accessible, like a dance hall or a club. It's just a cautionary tale. Sometimes it's best to keep driving.
Holy guacamole.
Oh, okay.
Oh, God, no!
No. 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 Don't you dare.
This is actually the 34th year of Fright Fest. So we've been doing Fright Fest for such a long time, and there's so much here for everybody. There's scaries, like really scary stuff for people who are really into the horror. There's a little bit more of the mild scariness, and then during the day we have a family-friendly event for those who are not so into the scary. On weekends, during the day, we have Kids Boo Fest, which is our family-friendly, kid-centric fall event. We've got things like a costume contest, a corn maze. We've got some awesome live entertainment, and it's all family-friendly. It's festive to Halloween, of course, but there are no scares. It is just your fun fall festive event. I would say Fright Fest is the scariest event. It's obviously the scariest event we have here, but it is really tailored to those who are into the horror, who are into being frightened, and into the jump scares. There's plenty to do here. We've got lots of haunted houses. We have 3 haunted houses that are based on horror franchises. And all new this year is actually the Conjuring universe based on the horror franchise. So there's a little bit of everything. We've got the houses. We also have the scare zone. So as you're walking through the park from place to place, you'll have to walk through our scare zones, which there's monsters lurking around every corner. So you got to be careful when you're walking through there because you may get a monster in your face.
Nonetheless, I'm contracted to be here. I'm obligated to be nice to the occasional child. Most of them run away with the same number of fingers they started with.
I have no other question.
You are about to walk through the estate at Wretched Meadows, which is one of our houses here at Six Flags Great America. Picture being in an old haunted mansion, a bed and breakfast type setting. It's scary.
Yeah.
Yes.
How are you feeling?
Well, after my experience on the Wrath of Rock Shasha.
Oh my God, let me off. Oh my God, I'm not looking.
I feel terrified. In fact, that was my first roller coaster experience as an adult. I think maybe as a child I got on, you know, the babies. So that was really terrifying to go through that. And now I'm going through a haunted house. And I don't know if you saw me go through the haunted house experience. I think it was a couple of years ago in another part of town. I was cussing, something that I don't do. It's against my religion. And I should have worn an adult diaper. So I am really scared, I'm not gonna lie, and we'll see how this goes. Terrified Tia. Snap, snap,
Jenna,
snap,
give me
snap,
a clap
snap.
right in front. Perfect.
All right, here's Jenna, she's with me. Are you terrified, Jenna?
I'm so
Let's see, what's another J word
Oh,
that
yeah.
we could think of?
Wow.
Well,
Jump scare Jenna.
oh, I like that. Jump scare Jenna. Are we going in now? Are they summoning us?
We're gonna die.
I hear
No, we're not.
sounds, like it's a little
I
weird.
know,
But I don't hear screaming, so that's a good thing. Is this place soundproof? Holy crap. Okay,
which
wait a
way do we
minute. I don't
go?
have time for this.
I don't. Which
Be
way?
quiet, because then they don't know we're coming.
Just maybe.
You
Don't you dare! Don't you dare.
Having your eyes open is a different experience. No, what is that? My heart is beating so fast.
My throat hurts. No,
Oh.
no.
Stay in that bed, darn it.
Don't you dare. Don't you dare.
Oh my God.
Don't you dare. I am not. Oh, someone's purse.
That's not my purse.
I don't.
No, 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 no.
No, please.
No.
I can't run.
No. Jenna, you gonna be okay?
Okay.
That's Jenna, everybody.
I did not.
Oh my God. I don't know how we did this. I haven't run that fast since college. Whew. Oh my God. Well, it was really scary, but the truth of the matter is, some of it I didn't see because I closed my eyes because I was too scared to look. Come with friends, so you'll have a friend like Jenna to walk you through it. I'm sure her shirt has plenty of makeup. Look at her shirt. It has my entire face on the side of it. What did you think, Jenna? I think I lost 10 pounds. For real, I'm sweating.
I think I don't ever want to do that again. I'm
something.
I'm down. I'm out.
I think what's really unique about Fright Fest is there's really something for everybody. We've got the ultimate scares. We've got the scare zones. We have the coasters in the dark. We have live entertainment, both in our Grand Music Hall and outside. We've got limited time offerings in terms of food and beverage. So we've got some cool items that we only have during the Fright Fest time. And then we even have a retail location that is just Fright Fest exclusive merch. It's called the Scream Shop. So I think there's something for everybody during this event, and there's really, a lot to do that's scary and also just thrilling at Six Flags.
No, please! No! I can't run! No. I'm dead.
Is this it? This is it. Thank God. Oh, it was worse the second time around. Oh my God.
By the time the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, Chicago already has a fairly well-established reputation as being a city known for crime and corruption. As the second largest city in the country, that's not shocking. But it's the size and the level of brutality of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre that really kind of makes it stand out. It can be a sort of stand-in for all the other acts of crime. And the fact that it's perhaps associated with an individual who himself has become a national celebrity by this point, Al Capone, makes it even more broadly representative of the city and the minds of most people. So I think it's the combination of the massacre itself with Capone, the fact that this is something that draws national attention, that really allows it to become kind of like one of these events that's very significant, not just in the city of history, but also gains a kind of national significance. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre stands out as perhaps the best known and most infamous instance of gangland violence during the period of Prohibition,
rotting their bodies and jeopardizing their immortal souls,
which lasted from 1920 to 1933. The actual massacre occurred on, surprise, surprise, February 14th, 1929. At that time, there were two main factions in Chicago that were at war with one another over control of the illegal booze trade. On the south side, you had the group led by Al Capone, to this day perhaps one of the best known names associated with Chicago. And then you also had a north side gang, which at the time was being run by a person named George Bugs Moran. And the two had been kind of going back and forth for a number of years, fighting over territory, fighting over the sale of illegal booze, and also engaging in a kind of tit-for-tat series of killings. Things kind of come to a head in the early winter of 1929, and it is believed, although it has never been conclusively proven, that Al Capone ordered a hit that would attempt to take out pretty much the entire North Side gang, including George Bugs Moran. On February 14th, 1929, several members of the Moran gang showed up around 10 in the morning to receive a shipment of whiskey that had been brought over from Canada. and Moran was interested in purchasing it and then kind of selling it off to different vendors. Moran himself was supposed to be there around the time that the whiskey was set to arrive, but unbeknownst to these individuals, as they began to file into what was known as the SMC Cartage Company, which was at 2122 North Clark Street. Don't try to go there and see anything today because it's an empty parking lot. What was unknown to them is that they were being watched from a rooming house across the street by people who were in on whatever was going to transpire. And when it was believed that George Bugs Moran himself had arrived at the scene, a call went out to alert several individuals that more or less the leader of the gang was there and they could move forward with their plan. And what was that plan? Well, within a matter of minutes, people who are in the garage waiting for the shipment of alcohol have their meeting disrupted by two uniformed, seemingly Chicago police officers. The police officers ask the 7 men that are there in the garage to line up against the wall so that they can be frisked to see if they have any firearms. Now, these aren't all people who are members of the Northside Gang. In fact, one of them is an optometrist who just happens to be kind of what we'd call a fanboy today of some of these gangsters, and he was there just because he was friends with them and was hanging out. And there's also the gentleman who's the mechanic, because this garage was where trucks arrived and trucks were serviced that were involved in the illegal booze trade. So these 2 men appear as Chicago police officers. They order the 7 men to line up against the wall with their backs to them so that they can be frisked. But that's not what happens. Instead, and here accounts vary, either 2 or perhaps 3 other individuals dressed in long overcoats and fedoras enter the garage as well, and they pull out from underneath their coats 2 submachine guns, and, if you believe the account that there's another person there, a shotgun as well. Within minutes, these individuals open fire on the 7 men lying against the wall. All of them are killed with the exception of one, a gentleman named Frank Goosenberg, who manages to survive despite having been shot over 20 times. After the shooting occurs, and then people out on the street heard some sound or commotion, but they didn't know what was going on. The men who are wearing the overcoats and the fedoras conceal their guns and come out of the carriage company with their hands up, with the 2 people dressed as Chicago police officers behind them, making it look as if there's been some sort of arrest or a raid, so that anyone on the street wouldn't initially be suspicious. But echoing throughout the garage and making its way onto the street is the horrible yowls of a dog by the name of Highball. Now, Highball was there guarding the carriage company and was basically considered the personal pet of the mechanic, a guy named Johnny May. And the dog's cries alert people in the area. Eventually, somebody goes into the garage and discovers the 6 dead men and Frank Goosenberg, who's still clinging to life. The real police are called this time, and they show up. They try to ask Goosenberg some questions before he's taken off to Alexian Brothers Hospital, but Goosenberg famously refuses to reveal anything that he might know about his assailants. And while it is largely believed to this day that Al Capone had some hand in the annihilation of the George Bugs Moran gang on February 14th, 1929, it's never been conclusively proven. And what I should also add too is that the intended target, George Bugs Moran, was running late that day because he had decided to get his hair cut in the morning. And so he was a couple minutes late. It was also February in Chicago. The sidewalks were icy, so he was taking his time getting to the garage. By the time he gets there, he is an eyewitness to these individuals coming out with their hands up with 2 officers behind them, not wanting to get involved, not wanting to risk being arrested himself. He leaves the scene, and he'll ultimately live long after the events of February 1929. While there isn't any hard evidence to suggest that Capone was behind it, this was certainly the individual that George Bugs Moran ascribed the crime to. And that's because of their heated rivalry and because various members of both the Capone gang and the Moran gang had been killed in the months leading up to what we now today call the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Also, Capone had the best motive. The 2 gangs were rivals. Wiping out Moran would allow Capone to sort of take over his territory and effectively control pretty much all of the illicit booze trade in Chicago at that time. That said, Moran, being a member of the criminal underworld, while Capone might have been his biggest enemy, he had a lot of enemies. But the big question still is, who were the gunmen and who organized the massacre? Because it did require a lot of planning in order to execute it as well as it went. And the prevailing thought is still that ultimately somewhere in the back of it, Al Capone was involved, but we don't know. There is some forensic evidence that surfaced in the investigation to connect particular figures with perhaps being one of the assassins. But to this day, it's like one of those great Chicago mysteries, and nothing can be proven conclusively. People are angry that such an event was allowed to transpire in a major US city. What were the conditions that led up to this act of brutality occurring? And so at this point, people are really just kind of exhausted by the criminal element associated with Prohibition. There was a glamour attached to gangsters at that moment, just as there continues to be to this day. But at this point in time, people are beginning to think, is it really kind of worth it to sort of tolerate these individuals, even if they're giving us access to beer and whiskey and wine and all the things we still want, even though they're illegal? Is it really worth tolerating these individuals if the price is people being brutally gunned down? I can see how a story like the St. Valentine's Day Massacre might have a sort of supernatural tradition that develops around it. And I think at the heart of that is that it was such a profound act of violence to have, 7 people gunned down in that way and ultimately lose their lives. The sense is that there's something that's unresolved. And in this case, what's unresolved is, to this day, we don't conclusively know who were the actual gunmen. The Chicago History Museum has a responsibility to provide a complicated, challenging, but also engaging version of Chicago's past to our visitors. And so that means, to the extent that is possible, always using the historical record as our guide in the ways in which we tell our stories. That said, with a story like this, we have to acknowledge that there is all of this kind of popular culture associated with it. And so that's also kind of part of the story that you're telling as well. What is the legacy of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre? What does it tell us about ourselves, both as residents of Chicago, but also as Americans as well? Why is this event remain so captivating to so many people? And how should we reflect upon it? If anything, the story of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre provides us an opportunity to think critically about our fascination with true crime. Why, even today, so many years removed from that incident, does true crime remain one of the most popular genres, whether it's a podcast or on a television show? And so this is a really great opportunity for the museum to kind of ask those sorts of questions of visitors and get us thinking about, what is it about this story that continues to draw us in?
Just like food, traditionally beer was tied seasonally to the availability of ingredients. Now we've sort of associated certain things like Oktoberfest beer with the Oktoberfest celebration in Munich. We have our wonderful Oktoberfest beer out now at the Salt Shed Brew Pub where we're sitting. But other beers, summer is associated with light and crisp and refreshing, sort of fruit-flavored beers. Fall, you want a little bit sweeter, a little bit maltier, a little warming. That's what this Honkers Ale is. It's the first beer we ever made, all the way back in 1988. One of the most common questions I get is, why don't you make Honkers Ale anymore? We do. It just came out September 15th, and it'll run all the way through the winter. So an amazing seasonal beer for the fall and winter. Americans have gotten very used to changing their coffees, changing their food with the seasons, beer as well. So beer, you experience different flavors with the different seasons. Traditionally, there's been fall beers throughout the world over many years. Honkers Ale, which is a beer that we think is great year-round, but it just felt like a fall beer to us when those leaves are starting to crunch under your feet, the temperature is changing, you open your windows. For us, it just is a beer that feels like Chicago in the fall. Anything that has malt, that has a caramel flavor to it, maybe a little bit more sweetness that's associated with fall instead of a sweetness that's like a fruit summer oriented. So a little bit higher alcohol sometimes helps too, but just those warming beers that go with the season and the change of temperature. I love Chicago weather. Chicago has the best weather in the world. Why? Because of the change of the seasons, right? We get extreme seasonal changes. And what does that mean? That means new food, new drinks, and in our case, new beers. Also, as it's October right around the corner, and in Munich, Oktoberfest has already started. We've got our Marzen, which is an Oktoberfest beer. Again, a little caramely, a little sweet, just right for that transition into the fall from summer. And finally, as we know, Chicago can get cold fast. We have a Bourbon County Stout, really sweet, really malty, higher alcohol, delightful if it's cold out and you just need some warmth in your body. We have 2 locations in the city. At our original brewery, Fulton and Wood is our tap room. You can go to the brewery, try beers that are made right there, or you can come to our new brew pub here right on the Chicago River, looking right at Goose Island, but we're right next to the Salt Shed Music venue. Beautiful facility, 100-year-old building where we used to service the salt trucks. Come on down and visit us. Cheers, Chicago, and welcome to fall.